While I wouldn't necessarily say that Slaanesh is the weakest faction, they certainly are the hardest to be proficient with. Generally, they're fairly unforgiving for mistakes, and while their very fast speed and excellent mobility does lend itself well in many situations in Domination, their lack of general staying power can bite them pretty hard, especially in land battles where you're forced to fight. And especially against Nurgle, I've found in this patch. I don't know, maybe you guys have had other experiences. Let me know down in the comments below if you've had success with Nurgle. Against Nurgle with Slaanesh in land battles. In Domination, though, like I said, that maneuverability and speed can win you the day just by outmaneuvering your opponent, getting on the objectives, and attacking where they are weakest. Today, Glorious Feeder is going to attempt to do that with Slaanesh against Nurgle. Got an Exalted Keeper of Secrets, lore of Slaanesh. I like this pick quite a bit, but I think out of any matchup in the game, this is probably the best for N'Kari, and I'll talk more about why later on. But Exalted Keeper of Secrets definitely also a very good choice here. The Cultists of Slaanesh always going to be good. Demonettes, Exalted Demonettes can be pretty good. Regular Demonettes and Exalted Demonettes both, like all of Slaanesh, if misused, will die very quickly, but can do some pretty incredible offensive damage. We've also got a couple of Furies there, a couple of Marauders with Spears, 3 Marauders with Spears, in fact, in reserve. Soul Grinder with Slaanesh, love this guy in this matchup. Nurgle's lack of anti-large AP does mean that the 90 armor and not to mention excellent melee stats are all very applicable here. Also carries Soporific Musk, anti-large 25 bonus there, AP damage of course, not super applicable, but in general also comes with Strider and Devastating Flanker, which does make it of course unique among Soul Grinders, definitely the best in melee. And for the cost, I mean, this thing outshines a Shaggoth in many ways for slightly less cost, which is very impressive. Exalted Demonettes of Slaanesh, we've got a couple of spawns. These muys finally picked up their Soporific Musk that their tooltip always said they had. They actually do have it now, so they're going to be, I mean, they were already pretty decent before. Definitely the Slaanesh spawn were the worst, I would argue, but now they're pretty much on par with the other factions. Chaos spawns, the other Monogod factions, more Hellstriders. We've got, a couple of regular Hellstriders, 1 Hellscourge, 2 more Furies, and 2 Marauders on Nurgle's side. Exalted Grey Unclean, 1 Festering Stooges, a couple of Cultists as well, a couple more Plague Bearers, and a Beast of Nurgle, 4 spawn in reserve, 3 Plague Bearers, 3 Plague Toads, and 3 Nurglings. I do love the spawns, like I said, for all the Monogod Chaos factions. In Domination, spawn are very good for a number of reasons. They provide you unbreakable, monstrous infantry capture weight, which, of course, monstrous infantry is the same as regular infantry at full 6 capture weight. And, of course, them being unbreakable, especially against other demonic factions and factions that can bring big, powerful, terror-causing pieces, are going to be very useful. So just a lot of utility, to be honest, for all 4 factions. Anyway, so let's talk a little bit about the Keeper of Secrets, why I like him in this matchup, and why I like N'Kari even more. So the self-healing of these Slaanesh Greater Demons is well known, but specifically I wanted to talk about the difference. The Slaanesh Exalted Keeper of Secrets here does get this, which heals based on units nearby with wavering leadership, right? Whereas N'Kari's conditional heal is similar, but it actually gives a big burst heal rather than a constant heal, and it pops every time a unit is fully wiped out within the radius. So it's a little bit different. Generally, I would say the Exalted Keeper of Secrets self-heal is broadly more useful in more matchups, but being that Nurgle right now, out of the Monogod factions, has the least mortal representation, they tend to bring the most demonic units, and Chaos Spawn also being unbreakable, you have to fully wipe them out, right? So you can potentially harvest them for self-healing. Those factors combined mean that, and of course, N'Kari just does straight up more weapon damage, even after the bonus versus large of the Exalted Keeper of Secrets, right? 470 with a 25 bonus versus large is still only 495. N'Kari does 500 weapon damage straight up, and also can double that with the Wit Stealer Sword. Comes with a very powerful debuff. Yes, N'Kari is a lot more expensive, but I think, again, this is the one matchup where I would say you pretty much always want to take N'Kari right now. Just, you know, my own personal opinion and 2 cents on that. But let's see how the Exalted Keeper of Secrets can perform. Definitely a very solid option here as well. One benefit that it also has over N'Kari is this shield right here that it carries. Does give a 20% missile block chance. Nothing too crazy, but You might see some rogue Death's Heads here, and the Festering Stooges. Legs as purple as the Slaanesh Furies chasing them down the hill here. Tactically, I did also want to say, for Nurgle, it's kind of interesting to deploy kind of tight in a blob to take this high ground objective and then try and push through this choke down to this objective number 1 here in the center. For Nurgle, it's an interesting play. You know, definitely nice slicing shards drop here, too, is going to come into a ton of damage to the Festering Stooges there. They should be able to heal through it, but some nice DPS early on. But yeah, this kind of forces like a 1-2 engagement potentially in this nice tight blob, which Nurgle loves to fight in. So it's an interesting tactic, does kind of make sense, but you leave yourself open a little bit as you do come onto this objective number 1. If Slaanesh had like quite a bit of cavalry, for example, they could have probably already got like a full concave and just mass collapse as soon as you come down onto this objective. And maybe also for Glorious Feeder, you may want to consider bringing some more cavalry. Generally, I mean, right now, I would say 1 or 2 Exalted Demonettes is probably pretty good, but in general, the Demonettes and Exalted Demonettes can just be replaced by similarly costed cavalry, and they will just perform better in almost every situation. Yeah, Seekers can be quite good if you use them well, but they're even faster and more damaging, right? Even more glass cannons than the Demonettes, but it just feels like the risk-reward, there's much more of a reward upside on the cavalry units as they currently are. I'm really hoping that Demonettes and Exalted Demonettes both will get buffed in the next patch. But anyway, speaking of Marauders and Demonettes, they're all going to be charging in here. Exalted Keeper Secrets. The other thing, too, specifically, and again, as it relates to Spawn will never waver, right? So the Exalted Keeper Secrets can't harvest any HP off of the Spawn, whereas N'Kari, you know, definitely wants to harvest off of the Spawn, right? Wants to be at least in the vicinity when the last spawn is finished for a given unit. Anyway, some spears fighting here with the Soul Grinder, lots of nasty anti-large, so this spawn's having just generally a pretty terrible time. The Toad's also charging in. Thing is, though, one weakness of both the Exalted Keeper and N'Kari is the low mass. We take a look here. One nice thing about Warhammer 3, we can actually see the mass as we mouse over this entity size here. 4,000 mass for the Exalted Keeper Secrets. The Toads are at 1,200. The Spawn, I believe, are 1,500. So they're all kind of within that same range where you can see the Exalted Keeper Secrets having a hard time pathing through multiple at a time. We take a look at a broad view here. Nurgle's captured this high ground objective. We've got the Exalted Demonettes moving through to try and contest. Honestly, you could even just maneuver them all the way up and around and then, like, I don't know, run somewhere else, but it's a little bit weird kind of with Slaanesh versus Nurgle. Like, you can only run around in circles for so long before you actually do have to engage. Again, Domination does mean that you can go, like, do this, like, cap this objective and still contest on the victory objective while not just YOLOing into a absolutely guaranteed demise. Kugath, like I said, is very oppressive in this matchup. We don't see Kugath in this particular battle. The nice thing is in Domination, you can't just outmaneuver him and fight wherever he is not. And yes, he'll throw some artillery at you, but that's fine. The Soul Grinder doing great here. Blight Swarm on it, debuffing its melee defense, spreads to other nearby units. I really love that effect. That kind of spreading of effects that Nurgle does. Very cool and thematic. But the Exalted Keeper Secrets took quite a bit of damage in that engagement and was not able to harvest much self-healing at all. Given that there's not a ton of Nurglings being used right now, like even the infantry being brought in, or Nurgle in many cases in this center is a lot of these Plague Bearers and such. Festering Stooges still hanging on, despite another nasty slicing shards coming their way. Oof, just murdering my frame rates. Wow, went to like 2 frames per second there. Great job on optimization. Yeah, thanks, CA. Anyway, more Slaanesh units piling in, and the fight for this top ground objective is going to be pretty interesting. The Demonettes, I'm not sure about this engagement. I mean, they kind of just charged into 2 Plague Bearers. I mean, they definitely are defeating one, but I maybe would have waited until you maybe got like a Spawn to support them. Speaking of which, Spawn are piling now into the center, trying to maintain. I mean, they have that far ground objective out by the sea edge. But if the Spawn and the Marauders can get in here and help cap this objective, it will be of great benefit to Glorious Feeders. They're moving in now. Meanwhile, Soul Grinder doing a great job just holding, but all the support has been evaporated, and that definitely is an issue that you will run into with Slaanesh. Your support units for your strong single entities just not having the staying power, like I said. Hopefully, when you get to Warriors of Slaanesh in the future, that will solve that major deficiency of the roster. I mean, obviously, I would expect Warriors of Slaanesh to still be less tanky than your average Warrior of Chaos, right? Maybe they'll have immune psychology, a slightly less defensive, more offensively focused attack-defense profile. Maybe a little bit more speed, a little bit less armor than a typical Chaos Warrior. I'm not really sure. It'll be interesting to see how they kind of balance that out. But at the very least, even something in like the 70 to 80 armor range would be really nice to have in terms of an infantry unit, a heavy infantry unit for Slaanesh. So very much looking forward to the Warriors of Chaos DLC, Mortal Warriors DLC. Anyway. Yeah, the Soul Grinder of Slaanesh here, continuing to just grind through, and notice how the Exalted Keeper of Secrets, even though this unit is, I think, giving it some, it should be giving it some self-healing. Maybe the center mass of the Plague Bearers is not exactly within range, but for whatever reason, this Exalted Keeper of Secrets is not fully healing, so maybe this ability is actually slightly bugged as well. I don't know. I mean, I would think you'd probably want to see some healing. I mean, maybe. I guess this has a 35-meter effect range, and it wasn't quite hitting that 7-mass unit. So maybe he was just slightly out of range. A little bit unfortunate there. Again, something, as you learn Slaanesh, which I think Glorious Feeder is relatively new. Playing this faction, if I know right, maybe I'm getting that wrong. But anyway, just one of those things, you know, with the self-healing on your big, expensive Demon Lords, making sure that you're in the right position to actually get it. Very important. Anyway, tough situation to be in. Demonettes having a downhill engagement, which is great, but just in general, they're facing a far superior amount of HP, and the high weapon strength of the spawn does mean that they'll trade very well into those exotic Demonettes. The other spawn trying to get a rear charge, and nicely intercepted there by the Hell Striders, and Slaanesh was able to kind of just split push, forsake the center, and go over to these side objectives here. You still, because this map is small enough, though, that Nurgle can kind of maneuver between these two objectives, still want to have a token force here fixing in the center, making sure these troops stay busy, and just kind of building up the defenses here on objective number 2. In the meantime, another nasty slicing shards. Wow, that did a lot of damage to those Plague Bearers. And even the spawn, I think, took some pretty good damage on that. But the Soul Grinder's been having a tough time getting through this thick boy here. Absolutely gargantuan Plague bro. Just waddling up the hill here. The Exalted Great Unclean One, pretty much undaunted. Still a huge amount of HP and healing cap space left. So it's a tough one to be in. Exalted Keeper of Secrets, Blight Swarm can just maneuver away. Another thing to note, too, I mean, obviously, with the speed debuffs of being exhausted, being poisoned, other things, you can definitely get slowed down pretty hard. But Nikari does have higher base speed. I think it's 100 versus the Exalted Keeper Secrets 80. So another point in favor. I mean, obviously, both are definitely fast enough to get away from pretty much anything Nurgle can bring. But also, yeah, that little bit of extra does help when you're hitting a bunch of percentage-based debuffs, like, again, the debuff from Vigor, your poison, other speed debuffs. Having a higher base speed does just help you maintain, you know, that difference, right? Anyway, definitely some woeful tidings as Nurgle manages to command the high ground objective here and sees number 3. It's going to be a very, very close finish. Both these players are neck and neck. Slaanesh now has, I think, the capture weight to try and contest in the center here. You see the Keeper of Secrets get a nice spinning attack there. Soul Grinder kind of forming a little bit of an anvil here and then trying to hammer in from behind with the spawns. They do have Devastating Flanker, but I think, did their charge get interrupted a little bit? I think they actually do get a straight up rear charge. Not that it matters a ton. I mean, a double charge bonus on 30 charge, I guess it's something. 60 extra weapon strength and melee attack is definitely something. The Marauders don't have Devastating Flanker, but they do get in here nonetheless and help to do things. Exalted Keeper Secrets wants to stay close enough that it's getting the healing, especially from like these Nurglings here. But at the same time, you don't want to get actually tangled up in this combat, given the low amount of HP left. Only 1,673 HP for the Exalted Keeper of Secrets. Keep it nice and close. Admire the beauty, brutality of this game. As we get another summon from the cultists here. I think both the Nurgle cultists got unsummoned and resummoned, so we're seeing some more Plague Bearers. And the Exalted Keeper of Secrets even struggling to come unglued from the Plague Bearers. A little bit weirdness happening, I guess, with the Curse of the Slug there, with the Poison, with the Exhaustion, down to like 16 speed. Wow, that is impressive. You could slow down something that fast to be that slow. But Slaanesh did manage to capture the objective, but the lack of staying power definitely showing here as Glorious Feeder chooses to fall back. The big Chungus is coming. Plague Bro trundling down the hill, preparing to make his presence stankly felt on the objective. Slaanesh going to try and split push the objective here. Glorious Feeder kind of sensing some weakness, and I think this is the right play, but at the same time, you've got some Toads coming over here to try and outflank on this objective number 2. And there's enough resources of Plague Bears and stuff here that I'm not sure this kind of little group of Marauder infantry and cav is going to be enough to cut through them, but let's see. Right now, Nurgle's doing a good job holding them in front of the objective rather than actually on the objective, so they can maintain their capture without even being threatened. I mean, I think this is enough capture weight anyway. You've got 4 infantry units here versus, 2 plus 1 cavalry. Anyway, Exalted Keeper Secret still trying to stay alive. This is one situation where, yeah, you could come in here, maybe try and get like a quick rear charge on the cultist. I don't really know. There's not a lot of great places you can go because, again, this Nurgle player is not using a ton of Nurglings. Maybe you swing up the hill, get a rear charge in here, and try and force these guys into the banishment, kind of disintegration, so that you can get some self-healing there. But it is something to consider. Like, it's something you need to actively think about and plan for and position around with both N'Kari and the Exalted Keeper of Secrets, regardless of which one you choose to use. Want to be thinking about, okay, where do I need to be to get healing? And certainly against mortal factions, the Exalted Keeper of Secrets is a lot more reliable getting that healing because you're barely ever wiping out a unit completely against mortal factions. Against the other monogod demonic factions, I mean, like Khorne, Tzeentch, there's pros and cons to both, I would say, in both of those matchups. Personally, I like N'Kari against Khorne for the extra damage and sort of combat power there, plus the extra maneuverability. I think definitely against Tzeentch, you shouldn't take either of the big targets. You should definitely just take Cheap Herald and try and like hide in a bush somewhere so you don't get Lord sniped, but that's a discussion entirely for another day. In the future, against undead factions, I definitely think N'Kari will also be the better pick, considering that all of their units are going to get fully wiped out, right? Literally every single one. They won't have any units with leadership unless they're doing some funny, like, Sartosa build or something. But anyway, nice rear charge here from the Exalted Keeper of Secrets, just sticking that halberd right in the buns of the big Chungus, which is most uncomfortable, no doubt. But you can see there that the healing cap space is coming down a little bit. I think the Exalted Keeper, unfortunately, we don't get the full heal cap breakdown like we used to in Warhammer 2, where you could see how much the unit has actually healed. But anyway, definitely has healed some, but not enough. Definitely gets forced into banishment here. It's just not great, obviously, and Nurgle able to maintain their capture power on this center objective and just overpower Slaanesh. Barely, as you saw there, super tight finish, but it was just enough, just enough, as the Exalted Keeper of Secrets falls, that Nurgle was able to take home the win. So a super close game, honestly, very well played to both players. Kudos to Glorious Feeders for sending in a loss, and a very tight one at that. I honestly do think some minor differences probably could have changed this in terms of, I mean, it's hard to criticize Exalted Keeper of Secrets. The Exalted Keeper here did great. Don't get me wrong. 33,000 damage dealt, 3,733 damage value. Absolutely paid for himself. No question about that. But that sort of loss of presence at the end where he got so beat up, I just think against the spawns, against a couple of other targets with Nurgle, N'Kari does give you that little bit of extra edge that maybe that extra combat power would be enough to overcome and actually win in that late game. It's hard to say, but certainly it's something worth considering. Both the Exalted Demonettes also do pretty decent. The Furies, I get having a couple. I would maybe take a couple in reserve just to combat Plague Drones if they happen to bring any, but I don't know that I would take any in the starting army besides Plague Drones. There's really not any units they're good against in this matchup, so again, a little bit of fine-tuning of the army composition here. Love the Soul Grinder. I would probably actually take 2 of those, to be honest, and I also love the pick up the spawns, even though they didn't necessarily pay for themselves. Cavalry also just generally performs very well for Slaanesh. So yeah, you could probably cut these 2 Furies in your starting army and just bring a couple of cavalry in it there. But yeah, overall, great performance. Like I said, just a little bit of differences here, even with the build as it was. Some minor tweaks with this Exalted Keeper Secrets play. Minor improvements might have swung the game, but still a great game nonetheless. And big thanks for sending it in on Nurgle's side. No question, Exalted Grid and Clean One cleans up a ton of value. The Festering Stooges also survived for an alarmingly long amount of time and managed to pay back their damage value despite getting bunker busted early on. Plague Bears also perform generally pretty good here if they can get into position. Spawns kind of get mown down in many cases, but also pay back some pretty nice value. Toads, same thing. Actually, the Toads are very cost effective. Down at 600 price, I think definitely max Toads in this matchup. Trade well against all Slaanesh infantry, even the Marauder Spears. It's okay, definitely. But anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this one. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.